Well, hi. My name is Mark Johnson. I'm with the PLOS in San Francisco, and it's really great to be here. Thanks, Bert, for inviting me to participate in this august panel of speakers. Before I get going into the presentation, I'm going to be communicating some ideas that came from my colleagues at PLOS, in particular Adam Hyde, product owner, John Chodaki, our product director, my boss Helen Atkins, and the woman that was smart enough to hire all three of us, Adam, John, and Helen, and myself, all four of us, Kristen Rattan. So this is kind of meant to be a little bit provocative for the folks in the room, and I hope it makes sense as we go along. Before we go, though, I want to ask you all some questions. So first of all, how many folks in the room are publishers? Great, a lot of people. And how many of you have multiple journals? And all of those journals have exactly the same workflow, right? Yeah, all right, good for you. Let's see, how many of you are work for vendors of peer review and peer review management systems? Great, okay. For the publishers in the room, one more question. How many of you really like your submission peer review management system? Not as many hands went up the first time, or as the first time, okay. So I'm going to take that into consideration as part of the talk, that peer review journals tend to have very similar general workflows, but those workflows vary. And they vary from publisher to publisher, obviously. But within a publisher, they can also vary from journal to journal. And let's face it, when we actually analyze the workflow, it varies article to article. And as a result, I would say that we need flexible modular systems that can adapt to these different types of articles that we have that we're pushing through our different journals. So I'm going to talk about flexible modular systems. But before I get into that, I want to kind of further illustrate the problems that we have with the tools we have at our disposal right now. For the most part, the vendors that are in our marketplace are providing really nice workflow engines. And when you first come on board with these workflow engines, they give you a very thorough interview and understand your workflow, and they build the system for you. And it might look something like that. But the workflows are hard-coded by the vendor. And hard-coded means that you can't easily turn the first line into the second line as you adjust your workflows. And if you try and come up with some additional concurrent types of activities and change it further, you can't make those changes either, not without taking time for development and the cost to make those changes. So that's not a good thing for us. In fact, I would argue that inflexible manuscript systems slow the advancement of scientific knowledge. If you're not putting manuscripts through your system quickly enough to get them published as fast as those articles deserve, you're actually doing a disservice to the authors and to the community that they serve. So it's a big deal. Having a fast, effective system is really important. We believe at PLOS that a modular card-based system is something that could help all of us. And what do I mean by a card-based workflow? So how many of you have done the Post-it exercise, right? You do a brainstorming session, you put the Post-its, the sticky tabs on the wall, and then you sort the sticky tabs into columns of similar types of ideas. Well, we took that concept, or I should say, Trello took that concept. How many of you are familiar with Trello, Trello.com? It's a productivity idea of sticky tabs on a wall and puts that in the cloud. It creates an environment that's really easy to manage these individual cards or tasks. And in fact, it looks something like this, where you've got individual cards in that column on the far right. The technical checks probably resonates with a lot of folks in the room, at least the publishers in the room, with the different types of checks that you would do on a manuscript before publication. And then each of those phases of the workflow, you could subdivide tasks into those phases. You could call them columns or stacks. So that's the concept that I'm trying to get across here. And if we're Yeah, so having an idea of cards and stacks, what if we had a Trello-like card-based editorial system? And by that, I specifically mean, what if kind of the blue space here was the platform, the environment, and each of the tasks was created in a modular way as a card. Think of it like your iPhone and all of the different apps that you have in your iPhone. You could put the apps in different locations on the, put the ones that you use frequently on the first screen, and so on and so forth. So that's the concept here. What could you do if your manuscript system was set up with that type of configuration? And I've got a little video here. It's not as cool as Joel's. Whoops. Okay, how do I make it? There we go. Okay, so we've done a little development, and in fact, we've created a, hypothetically speaking, we've created a way to convert Microsoft Word docx into HTML really nicely. And we can do that at part of the submission process. So when authors submit their Word doc files, we automatically generate HTML views of that. And once we have HTML views, we could easily generate a JATS XML kind of view. So I'm pulling these items from the far right technical checks column and moving them into the very first column on the left, the submission column. And that creates a really nice situation. You could have a what you see is kind of environment so your reviewers could work off of the web version. The author can see what the article would look like before it's actually published in the journal. Now, if we make these changes, we can automate a lot of the technical checks. So why don't we go ahead and grab that whole column, that stack of cards, and let's drag them over and move them earlier in the process. Okay, come on, keep playing. Did I already do that? Okay. There we go. There's the technical checks. Oh, and then it stopped. Oh, there it goes. It's just really slow. Yeah, high production values. Great, okay, so now we're doing a lot of automated checks up front in the process rather than at the end of the process. But the authors and editors and reviewers are still really happy about that because they have a beautiful HTML interface that they're working with. We'll go ahead and put that last step, send the file off to production. We'll go ahead and drag that over to the final far right column for decisions. And there you go. So we've made a couple of changes here. And if we had a modular-based system where each of those cards was like an app that you could easily move around in your workflow, you don't have to do a lot of extra development work. You don't have to pay a vendor for that type of change. You could make it yourself, and it could be really, really empowering. I mean, think about what that could do for your type of business. John talked about a lot of the different types of changes that are happening in the realm of peer reviewership. What if you wanted to change your workflow right now to accommodate those changes in peer review? If you had a card-based modular system, it'd be a lot easier to do. So, just to recap, we need flexible workflows to innovate, to continually improve our processes, and because we are different from each other. While our processes generally are the same, we differ from publisher to publisher, from journal to journal, and even from manuscript to manuscript. That's the way we work. So, what if we had that kind of system that used HTML instead of PDF, that could convert PDF or a Word docx, or even, say, a LaTeX file into HTML at the ingestion process? What could we do with that? What if we had a system that allowed for high-tech automation some of that automated workflow that we still have, but also creates a really easy forum for engagement with the different types of contributors. Chat rooms, easy ways to communicate within, between reviewers, the handling editor and the staff, to make those kind of internal system communications as easy and high touch as possible, satisfying. What could we do? What if the system had a UI, like Pete mentioned, having a really nice interface? It really matters. What if we had a system that was really powerful but had such a nice UI that you didn't have to spend a lot of time training staff on how to work it because it was intuitive? Oh yeah, and by the way, what if it was modular and card-based? PLOS is working on a card-based editorial workflow environment for manuscript authoring, submission, and assessment. And that's part of our mission to transform scholarly communication through the use of cutting-edge technologies and publishing practices. And I'll leave that up there for the tweeters in the room. If you want to tweet that, I did the count. It's just a little less than 140 characters. So let me tell you a little bit about the PLOS environment. And it's under development right now. I'm not going to do a demo for you because it's still under active development, but we do intend to be rolling it out in 2015. It's really has two different key components to it. You've got the core, the blue part of Trello that we were looking at before, and then you've got cards. And within the core, there are four areas. There's a dashboard that gets you where you need to be. There's a manuscript, which is where the action happens. I mean, we all know that the manuscript is where the good stuff goes down. And that's what we've focused on, the manuscript as the motif. You've also, for internal folks, you have a flow section, which contains all the possible cards that you have built at your disposal. And you have a workflow management section, which is sort of what I was trying to demo with the Trello video, is how the workflow could actually operate. Oh, and we've integrated the cards into the manuscript, the flow, and the workflow sections. The manuscript is really where the action goes down, and we've worked really, really hard to have a nice, clean interface. So you've got the HTML rendering of the article in one column and the tasks that the user needs to do in the right-hand column. And the tasks that need to be done are green. Once the user has done a task, it turns to gray. And the system is smart enough to recognize your role on a particular article, because we know that some people that are editors may also be authors and may also be reviewers. And the difference happens at the article level. Here's a look at the workflow. You notice it looks like cards from Trello. Trello system is free, it's easy to use, it has millions of people using it, and it's really intuitive. People that have never seen documentation about Trello can go to Trello.com and figure out how it could help their personal workflows. We think that this type of card-based manuscript submission system could also have that kind of intuitive touch with users. And it does some other things. It's the HTML formatting up front that I mentioned. It's very, very powerful conversion engine that happens upon submission to create a nice HTML environment that the authors can use for collaborative authoring. And being an HTML view, we can try and get it to look as close like the final version that's published on the website. And that really helps people understand what they're doing, the changes that they're making throughout the whole process. That's not a WYSIWYG editor, that's a WYSI situation. What you see is, and the difference from that is when you make a change, for example, if you add the authors in a manuscript view, you're adding the authors to the metadata. And if you draw up a metadata card and you update the authors in the card, the authors are updated in the manuscript. Anytime you make a change in the system, what you see is. It's a real nice integration between content and the metadata around it. And it's very pretty UI, user experience around it. We've developed the concept of concurrency, which I would describe as ultra-low latency. It's not a big stretch for technology these days. I mean, we all do video conferencing. There's a lot of audio and video data that's being exchanged 2 ways in real time that allows us to communicate together. Doing a text-based chat room is actually really easy to do. And the other component is with concurrency is if I make a change, any of my collaborators would be able to see my change instantly. And we've done this by leveraging existing technologies. We're PLOS, so we've used as much open source technology as we possibly can. And it's a work in progress. Stay tuned. I hope that SSP invites me back next year to tell you of our adventures so far with the new system. And with that, I would leave you with a prediction that within 7 years, all major publishers will be using systems. Now, I'm not saying that everybody will be using the PLOS system, although maybe you will. But you'll be using systems that have seen the success of the PLOS system and that might want to mimic that. Sort of like the open access journals that are being launched now, which is great. We think that's fantastic. We want you to copy us. We want you to let us show you some successes so that you can capitalize off of the experiments that we're doing. And with that, I would say thank you very much, and we'll open it up for the panel.
So we've actually come awfully close to our end time here, and rather than ask any self-serving questions here, I just want to see if anybody has any burning questions for any of the members of our panel that they'd like to ask about what you heard. How many of you are traditional journal publishers who have had your minds blown in the last 90 minutes? I think yeah, there's some really interesting stuff going on here with each of these presenters. Yeah, we really come to 5:30, and it's cocktail hour for most of you. So I'm going to say thank you, and thank you for each of our members.